Good evening. This is quite an honor. You know, I'm usually have people trying to run me out someplace, so this is really, really exciting. It's exciting, and it's so much more that needs to be done. We all work so hard, and I don't know. For me, I just always keep working. As Millicent said, we were able. One of the things I think I didn't tell her about because she was taking up all my time talking about me. But we also were part of a. We worked with a group of churches, and we actually sued the federal government and the state for transportation for Milwaukee. We actually got a $12 billion settlement in which we were able to get buses out to the suburbs because we don't have interregional transit at all. And we still don't have it in 2019, and you know that's done on purpose. We're in Milwaukee, that's where they want us. And so we're always trying to do something to try to get things done. The other thing I wanted to say is that for sure the Black Health Coalition, in looking at health, I always kind of tell people that there's health care, and then people talk about health, but everything is health. You know, you got social determinants, but that's health, right? We have history, that's all health. We need to start, I told her I was gonna push this for you guys to think about that we need to put all this together and not have it separated. Because when you're talking about people, it really is, it's all that. Yeah, you can look at where they live, all this stuff affects who they are, but I think it's more the disruption in terms of, well, we can do this part, we can do that part, somebody else has to do that, and we know that's from for what we do here in this city. I was talking earlier saying when I taught nursing at Marquette University for about 10 years, and one of the things I always talked about was the fact that we don't look at who we are. When you say, I tell them, if you don't understand, but this country, healthcare is a business. It's always been a business. It's not social policy. And if we don't think about that in a way, even when we want to do this, it's always going to kind of stand in the way of part of our advocacy doesn't recognize that fact, right? And so I've been pushing that, and I'm going to continue to push it, and I really would like Movement is Life, which is odd that I would come here with my crutch, getting my knee fixed, all the time that I'm getting this done, too. But I'm like, okay, that fits. Because I can speak to how I waited probably 5 and 6 years too late to even have the surgery. Had the pain all the time. Kept thinking it'll go away, or I could do, I took the shots, I did all the other stuff, knowing when they already said, look, you're bone on bone, and I'm like, I'll be able to do this, but I think as I got to really 70 now, right, 71, I'm like, I don't want to do that if I got the rest of my life to live, I want to do it more healthy, and so I think I'll be an advocate for a lot of other folks in Milwaukee and other places telling them that, because I should have known better, and I didn't do it. So I was asked originally, what is the other thing too, and I'm calling Millicent out because I should, I mean, I said, well, okay, I'll come up and kind of do what I'm doing, right? Just talking to people and thanking folks for their award. I'm so excited. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure it's around here somewhere, as soon as I'm done, oh, okay. So I said, well, then I'll just think, and she goes, oh, no, you have to do a presentation. I'm like, why? I already got the award. Why I gotta do a presentation, And she tells me this 2 days ago, guys. 2 days ago. So what I thought I would do is then rather talk more about the Black Health Coalition, to just kind of give you a sense of the things that we do, that we've done through these years. And a lot of times people are kind of like, even when we were fighting for the buses, that's health. What do you do? That's not health. I said, yes, it is. It helps people get jobs. It helps people feel better. So a lot of stuff we push that generally what they think are health institutions don't do that, so why are you doing this, So I'm just going to go through this extremely fast. It's funny, too, because there's like 70 slides up there. I don't plan to go through 70 slides anywhere near, but I'm one of those people who never know which slides I want to use. So I just put them all on there, then talk through it. This one I've used for years because I think it really talks about what we need to be thinking about. And like you said, it's an unknown author, but they say reality is what we take to be true. What we take to be true is what we believe. What we believe is based upon our perceptions. What we perceive depends on what we look for. What we look for is what we think. What we think depends on what we perceive. What we perceive determines what we take to be true. What we take to be true is our reality. So if you think about that, you know, when we do things, we have to have some basis, in fact, about how we do them. It doesn't matter how religious we are. It doesn't matter all these things. When you got to translate it, what do you think? What is reality to you? What do you look for? How do you find people you work with? What do you think about the people that you work with? What do you think about the people that you take care of? Do you have some of the issues around implicit bias or other things that you don't even know you have? That's what this does. Excuse me, and I was also told to talk about racism because that is, I think that still is one of the most pieces that are so there that we as a country still are not grappling with. We're kind of circling around it and we talk about it for a year or so and then we ignore it. We try to do things without calling it that. We want to get other names for it. And to me, as a health provider and in terms of the health, it's one of the things in this country that if we don't ever deal with it straight up in terms of what this country is about, it doesn't make everybody bad people. I think it makes more bad people if you don't deal with this at some point. And certainly when you're talking about even looking at motion is how much do we impact the folks we work for because they're dealing with racist people who are taking care of them? And how does that impact? You can fix their knee, but what about the rest of them? You can fix their hip, but if they have people taking care of them who act like they don't want to touch them, about those who, even with the surgery I just had, well, me being me, I filed 2 complaints against a few nurses. They didn't know who I was. That was their mistake. Yeah, but what I saw them doing was treating me and other folks like we were drug addicts. I mean, it was real clear. I mean, they said, well, we're going to order this Oxycontin for you. The doctor said that, and then 2 pills every 4 hours. So then they asked me, and I said, well, why don't you just give me 1? I mean, I just want to take control of my own pain, right? So I said, why don't you just give me 1, and then I'll take the other one later if I need it. But when I asked for it later, she said, well, you can't have that. It was 2 hours later. And she said, you can't have that. I said, why not? It's still within the 4-hour period. Well, you should have told us you only have an hour to get the second dose. I said, you didn't tell me that. And now you're telling me I can't get it? I mean, right? This is 2019, right? And you're doing this? And so, needless to say, I talked to everybody I could. And then some, because I told them, I said, I'm not letting this slide because I'm going to advocate for me. I said, but I advocate for everybody, but I want to advocate for those who don't even think they can advocate. They don't even know you're doing this to them. And sure enough, they did investigate. They did a full investigation. They found out there was some discrepancies in how people were being treated, you know, and the nurses got reprimanded. They apologized, you know, and they apologized to me, but I'm like, I just want to make sure that this doesn't continue to happen. But the bottom line, too, is what if you did have somebody there who had a problem? You should be working with them, not punishing them, right? Or making them less than human because they have a drug addiction. I mean, to me, that kind of behavior, and it's based on race, it's also based on class. You know, for certain people, we still, in all these days, still do these things differently. So, but it's important for us to know that it's not biology. People do think that, you know, people still think that race is based on biology. Race is. Racism is not. Racism is based on how we think about people. And many times we don't think how we think about people. That is an implicit bias. I had mentioned to my crew down here that we're meeting that I'd rather work with a straight out racist because they know who they are. Okay? But the ones who get their feelings hurt when you say something to them, I don't have time for that. I'm a real nice person. But I need you to figure this out yourself, you know, or not feel bad if something happens, you know, but that's not helping us to do things better. And I've just been so impressed since I've been here and talking to people, and I know there are good people here. I know there are people who want to do the right thing, but sometimes you may have 5 PhDs or something, but you might still need a little education. Y'all can call me, I'll come do it. I'll charge you though, be sure. But I'm saying that I kind of need to think about this. So it's a social construct that precisely captures the impact of racism. And some of you can look at this. It's called Race, the Power of Illusion. If anybody can get that from the California newsreel, I use that with a lot of my education. And the thing that I think is important for you to know is that I train people in formal settings, in universities, all over. I train people in the community, and I use the same thing. People somehow think community people, they won't understand this. Yes, they do. We do this presentation in the county jail. We do the presentation to pregnant women in the county jail, to men in the county, excuse me, the county lockup and stuff. And it's interesting how we make assumptions about people that they won't like this. I mean, we did 2 hours and we had to come back and do another 2 hours. They were that interested in the things we talked about. That's when you know that you had them. And I'll give you a quick, one young man, we were talking about the things that were going on. And he just stopped, because we talked about trauma and we talked about these kind of things. And he stopped and he stopped me, he said, because he wasn't in for domestic violence, but he said, you know, I love my wife, but I have hit her. And then he was thinking, and that's why I stopped. You don't jump in and let him think. And then he said, but my stepfather used to hit my mother. He hadn't even thought of the connection until we gave him the information he needed. And he was, can I get that ACE study you got? I mean, can I get that? Because we do resilience too. He said, I want to send it home to my wife. I want her to fill it out. And could I have that another packet? Because we give them a lot of information. I mean, that's what I'm talking about in terms of, and I tell people sometimes we do this, like, well, why are you doing this with them? Well, maybe I can do something before they're in the House of Corrections, before they get to prison, right? But if you don't have the sense that you can do something to make a difference, then I guess you don't. But we really do try that. I'm going to be skipping some of this. You've gone through I know everybody knows about racism, so I'm not going to do that. But the microaggressions, I think, that we talk about now are really, really important, because it is this concept of certain ideas that we think about people and what goes on and who they are. I had already given them the table one example, but another example, I already had my PhD, but somebody gave me a shirt from University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, gave me an alumni shirt. I was going out to the hospital to visit my sister, and I was walking around, heading to her room, and the nurse came up to me, and she bent down and looked, and she said, well, did you finish? I guess I didn't know what alumni meant. Somebody just gave me a shirt, and I was so excited. I guess I said, yeah, 3 times. You know, and my sister, I thought we were too far, she's about hanging out the bed. Did she say that to you? I said, welcome to my world. Because you have, again, and it's like, and again, that didn't make her a bad person, but it does, if you don't know what you really think about and what you think about people, it does make a difference. You can't be comfortable. I think part of what I'm saying is we need to stop making people comfortable. That's not going to get us anywhere. It doesn't make you a bad person. The example I'd given at the table, I still had a great caring for that woman who, in terms of what she said to me, a different scenario, but I'd worked with her for 2 years. I knew her heart. I knew who she was. This is what doesn't happen because we don't get together, you don't know people enough. She still felt bad what she said to me, but I forgive her, and I didn't even think much about it. I was just like, you're part of what's happened with this country. And we certainly see a whole lot more of that now than we've ever seen, and that's why I think it's so important that we continue to look at that. So I'm skipping all this because I wanted to get to one thing, and then I'll be out of your way. Again, if, like I said, call me, I'll come do this for you, because I'm really, actually, like I said, I'm really very good. But but how many understand Life Course, have heard about that before, the whole concept of Life Course? If you haven't, you really need to look at that, because it's a study of people's lives, structural context and social change, what happens to people. And it has historical context in terms of saying what we need to look at. And I'm not going to go through all that because I want to really get to the whole issue of, and these are just some of but the whole concept of looking at historical trauma, because that's the new, like I said, this is the new concept in public health, which it should have been a long time ago. But they're looking now is that populations historically are subjected to long-term mass trauma, colonization, slavery, wars, genocide, Jim Crow, that has affected them, and even at the cellular level. If people understand about biogenetics now, they really have tied a lot of this to what's happened over decades of what's happened to populations. So if you look at what's happening, like I said, to the Native people, you look at what's happening to the Hispanic people who are mostly fighting for the land they always had. I always loved that. They were taking their land. It wasn't your land in the first place, you know, but they're fighting for it. And we're going to build a wall and keep these folks out and not figuring out what we do. But this concept, I think, is real important when you're beginning to work with people and your staff are working with people, because it incorporates building upon what they said, these 3 theoretical frameworks on social epidemiology in terms of looking at, number 1 is that psychosocial, which links disease to both physical and psychological stress. So now that's another thing, you're helping folks with their bones and all of that, but are you helping them with their stress? Are you working together collaboratively with other groups that can do that part? Because that's just as important in terms of getting all the help they can from the medical care. And that's why I've said we can't just keep leaving medical care over here and then doing all the other stuff over here and then wondering why people aren't doing better. And if you're looking at people who are already victimized, people who don't have enough money to do everything you want, if you're not recognizing that stress and you think it's just because they're not doing what they should do, we never will have a healthier group. So the second one is the political economic theory, which addresses all the things that's happened to us, these determinants of health, diseases such as unjust power relationships and class inequality. Those are just as deadly to your health as anything else, right? Is that in this country, people are sick just because they live in this country. And again, because this country is about money. And for folks who don't have money, irrespective of the race, it affects their health. And so I don't think we can keep talking about our little piece of the health and not the broader piece that we can do. And then the third one is the social ecological, where it talks about recognize the multi-level dynamics and interdependence of the past and the future and what's going on now, that it does make a difference. And I'm not going to go through all these, but it does say that lives are lived in a specific historical time and place. And if historical time and places change, they change the way people live their lives. So pre and post industrialization in Milwaukee, for example, was a big difference. My dad got out of the Navy after World War II, and I laughed because when he turned 65, he said to me, I need you to call Social Security to make sure I'm getting my Social Security. And I'm like, why would you begin your Social Security? He said, because Matthew isn't my name. What do you mean Matthew's not your name? No, this is about, excuse me? But he said, well, you know, when I joined the Navy, they said that his name is Mathis, and his great aunt lived with us, because her husband, they ran a store. I said, so Aunt Essie she called him Mathis all the time. I thought this was just a, kid, loving name that she'd given him because his mom died when he was real young and he'd come up every summer. I said, so she's calling you by your real name all this time and you never said a word? And he laughed. He's like, no. He said, but they told him that Mathis wasn't a name when he joined the Navy. So they just changed it. So I called, and they said no, as long as his Social Security number had not changed, he would still get his Social Security. But I was just floored, and he just never said, really, like I said, a word about it. You just got to do what you have to do, wow. But these are the things that I think that it's deliberate. That's another thing, deliberate. It's systematic. Quit blaming people for these, oops, sorry. And that is heavy, because they said that's for the barrack folks who weigh 400 pounds. And I'm like, but I like this one. It works for me. Yeah, take it down, keep it down there, because yes, I'll be in trouble. That we still in our minds, and that's part of that explicit bias I'm talking about. That's a killer for people, that we still in our minds still think, and trust me, I know we do have people, because I got them in my family, that not doing nothing, and they should be, but that's not everybody. And nor should it be based on race or sex or any of these things that we have about people. I think I'm not going through these things. This one, and I'm good at stealing stuff from people, I want you to know that. If I find something that's good, I'm gonna use it. This is one of the best things because it looks at 400 units, because I think for some people who don't know, for African Americans, this is a sentinel year because it's the 400th anniversary. I don't know, we're not celebrating that, but the 400th anniversary of the first black slaves that came to the United States. And then when you hear people, well, what's wrong with them? You know, they go after this, after 65, when we were supposed to have gotten civil rights. They've gotten this now, but take a look at this. 400 years, the first 246 years, we were slaves. The next 100 years was Jim Crow, which was still virtually slaves, right? So you're really only looking about 54 years of which things still aren't that great. Does this make sense to you? Because, I mean, I've shown this to teenagers, and they get it. I mean, they look at this, and they're like, oh. And I've seen people say, this is what I'm talking about. Why haven't they done anything all this time? If your population was doing this, you wouldn't be doing a whole lot either. And this is just another way of looking at the same thing. This was in the LA Times, I think back in 2014. But it just, it does you that. It just shows you, in terms of white privilege, they got free land, they got free labor, we got all the things that black people had to go through, and then they say, are you just slow or what? That's what I'm talking about in that incipient bias. I'm going to stop because I promised that I wouldn't, and like I said, I wasn't supposed to be doing this anyway. I was supposed to be coming up here and saying thank you and go and sit down, but you've been very attentive, and again, I so much appreciate this award you're giving me. Really, my heart is really full. Thank you very much.